I'd love to welcome Stuart Baxter to Clandestine Whiskey. Stuart is the global ambassador for Douglas Lane. And I should point out it's Douglas Lane, not Douglas Lang, which I actually have been pronunciating it. And I just asked Stuart beforehand what the correct pronunciation was. And yeah, he did point out it was Douglas Lane. So that's just one for your memory banks. Stuart, welcome to Clandestine Whiskey.
Thanks very much. Absolute pleasure to be here on a very surprisingly sunny day in Glasgow.
Oh, well, I'm down in Kent where we pay for the warm weather down here. So if it rains, then we want a refund, on the tax or something or other. So
absolutely, no, it's a beautiful day in Glasgow. But thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. So no, great to talk to you.
No, absolutely. No, I'm particularly interested. Whiskey ambassador and global, ambassador. I mean, that's just the dream job. I know you sort of started in November 2019, just 3 or 4 months before lockdown. But did you? Yeah. What does it involve your job? What did you do in those first 4 months with Douglas Lane?
So the first 4 months was kind of settling into the role and understanding, first of all, the brands that we have. I mean, we've got our 6 remarkable regional malts, which is the core range of our business. So it was understanding them down to a T. It was getting to know Fred, Cara, Chris, Cara being 3rd generation of the family-run company. So it's understanding them to some extent because, as you know, Douglas Lane is a family-run company. We're so close to our consumers that, some of our consumers still know far more than me about our products and the family heritage. So it was really integrating myself with the company and our history. And then traveling at that point, that's a very distant memory, to as many of our EU customers at that point as possible. And as I'd mentioned just before, we had plans, Chris and I, to go over to the States, but it was just a week too late. And that was all cancelled, unfortunately. And now I've just been traveling from this couch in this view all over the world, including some 4 a.m. Canada tastings, which has been very exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I did an interview, a 6:30 a.m. one, so not too bad, with a distiller down in Tasmania. But I'm an early riser anyway. So it must be one of the good things as well by working with an independent bottler is actually the variety that you have and you will get to taste. That must keep your excitement levels up quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big pulls that for me coming to Douglas Lane. As I said, I worked with, as I said to you, I worked with Pernod Ricard in India for 2 years. So going from a very large commercial, multinational company to, still multinational, but much more family run, much more intimate. And you're going from standardized whiskey, let's say, nothing wrong with that at all, but then we work with 65 plus distilleries at Douglas Lane, all coming in with our monthly samples, which I get sent to my house. Terrible job. But every month we get sent our samples from Dalhousie, Glencadam, Glenallachie, Ardbeg, Tobermory, Lechaig, same distillery, but and then all different strengths, all different casks, all different ages. And as you said, it just keeps things fresh. It keeps that level of excitement. When I was with Pernod Ricard, I was seen as the whiskey expert, and I'm nowhere near that. So I still had a lot of questions myself. So part of the pool coming to Douglas Lane was the fact that I'd be learning so much more. I'd be in an environment where I'd be forced to learn, and also being able to pick the brains of Fred Lane, Cara Lane, and Chris Leggett I don't think many people in my position would have passed up that opportunity.
So you're getting these samples sent to you, these single casks, etc. Do you then, you're obviously tasting them all, you're writing your notes down, then do you have a weekly or monthly meeting with your colleagues, say, actually, this one was particularly good, we need to do this?
Yeah, so there's part of that. I mean, within the team, we obviously are all big whiskey fans. So, when we get sent our monthly samples, it's on the group chat saying, here, did you try that Ardbeg 12? How good was that? Have you seen it's in the staff shop for this price? Like, yeah, I'm getting a bottle. So yeah, absolutely. We do our monthly sampling, which I used to do with my dad before lockdown, unfortunately. And then I'm not sure if you can see the black bottle in the corner, just next to the Talisker Distillers Edition. So I usually take about half my sample, taste it now, and the half that normally would go to my dad, I've been putting in this infinity bottle during lockdown. So that's been evolving, which is quite exciting. But yeah, if there's particularly exciting ones and we feel that it would work within the market that it's assigned to. Yeah, it's one of those ones where you've sampled it already and you go, great, I know what I can talk about with this, or this was really interesting. So when you eventually get to the taste, you can say, you know, this Ledaig 14PX cask, I expected it to taste like this, and it didn't. It really surprised me when I sampled it, you know, last week just before the tasting.
So that's quite interesting, actually, when you say, you know, will it work in that particular market? What different markets are there? We've got a visitor and my dog coming to say hello. This is Monty, everyone. He's the house dog, not distillery dog yet, but we're working on that. That's the next stage. But yeah, so I mean, what do different markets look for?
Oh, it really depends. I mean, obviously, when you look at, I was speaking to our Asian team, which is Paul Wang, John Hung, based out of Taiwan, and they take care of Asia. You know, Taiwan and a lot of other Asian countries really look for sherry and high age and darker colours. And lots of different markets have different degrees of awareness and education, let's say, with whiskey. You look at a lot of Asian markets are highly educated. They find it really, really interesting. And then you come back to Scotland. We're not big whiskey drinkers in Scotland. You know, we're predominantly gin drinkers. Yeah. I always say the worst person to recommend a whiskey is Scottish, except of course myself and any other Scottish ambassador. But it is true, you know, you get different understandings and different ways of consumption. In India, for example, when I was there, you've got a patiala, which is 120 ml of whiskey topped with soda. A very different way of consuming to, you know, in France or whatever. So it really varies market to market basis, a number of different things, but you start to understand what will fly in one country or another. For example, Italy love peat. I'm not trying to blanket. There's obviously loads of sweet lovers in Italy, but big fans of peat in Italy. So things like Big Peat, Rock Island work really well. Less so maybe Timor-Specie or Epicurean, which are bourbon, sweeter, fresh, citric, vanilla. So it's interesting. Keeps me on my toes, definitely.
No, absolutely, and it's great that as a company you do have your core range from, you know, the 6 regions of Scotland, so you can actually satisfy all the markets. I mean, how long does it take these brands to actually start to build now? Because you've been going for what, 74 years, maybe a bit longer than that.
73 now, going into 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, for you to release these, you know, amazing core range, which a lot of people will be very familiar with, because they're just a great value for money as well, and also great branding, because, you know, whiskey is just that, you know, well, me, a middle-aged man balding with grey hair, and, you know, but it's just, you know, yeah, it's fantastic, you know, and you've all seen, you know, Big Pete, I'm sure, and it's great having these, you know, graphics, and just brings it a bit more alive, and it brings a more fun element to it, doesn't it? You know, and it's intriguing, I think, for someone who's progressing from a supermarket, perhaps malt whiskey, and they see that on the shelf at a bar or, you know, a restaurant. You know, it's intriguing, isn't it? You know, and you want to sample some.
Yeah, I think we're definitely pushing the boundaries with regards to what, let's say, classical whiskey drinkers are. Which I think is really important in this day and age, and making sure that Scotch whiskey is accessible, because that's what it should be. I mean, Big Pete was our first remarkable regional malt, as we're talking about, you know, 6 regions, which was 2009 that we started that. And we've been blenders and bottlers since 1948, you know, bottling whiskies, introducing it into our wood policy. Our first brand was King of Scots, our blended Scotch, which is all around Asia very prominently now, if anyone's seen it. But yeah, it's one of those things, you know, you look at Scallywag you've got in front of you there, I've got mine here. It's a gorgeous little dog, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this dog, which was a real dog later. But, you know, people think that, oh, that's a great gift for my pal that's, you know, a dog lover who doesn't like whiskey. It's like, well, it's 46% non-chill filtered, no caramel cut. It's a serious liquid inside. And I think what we're doing is very much pushing people's misconceptions of what Scotch whiskey should be. You know, these are blended malts maintaining, you know, single cask, single malts from across Scotland, 9,000 bottles to a batch, roughly. It's serious liquid inside. It just so happens we're having a bit of fun with it at the same time.
And also, it's not obscure distilleries just making for blending. I mean, you know, there's Macallan, you know, in this, isn't there, I believe? You know,
Scallywag, Macallan and Mortlach, Glenrothes going into every batch.
Yeah, you know, so it's actually remarkable. And what I absolutely love about, you know, your company is that I think from memory that a lot of these deals with the distilleries were done on a handshake. And that handshake is still your contract, even though they're owned by these multinational conglomerates. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. It's funny because, you know, it goes kind of, that aligns itself with stock management, you know, cask management. You know, the one thing with Sandy Hislop, who's master blender of Royal Salute and Ballantine's and Glenlivet, I sat with him over a dinner once, and he spoke about how the casks that he's putting down are not for him; they're for his, you know, successor. And the casks he's working with are not for him. The casks he's working with weren't put down by him; they were put down by his predecessor. And it's a long time. It takes 3 years minimum for Scotch whisky to legally become Scotch whisky. So these agreements on a handshake and a smile, which to much to Cara and Chris's dismay, who came into the business in 2013, they still stand, because the guys that are working with the casks and our warehousemen or whoever, they've been with the companies for such a long time, because, you know, as we were talking about earlier, that's what Scotch whisky is. I remember there's that massive rumor that Pernod Ricard and Diageo were going to, you know, merge together, and people were talking about, oh, wouldn't it be great if, you know, all the best distilleries from Pernod and all the best distilleries to Diageo created a blended Scotch? It's like, they're already doing that. You know, if, you know, Diageo needs something that's maybe sweeter and softer, they'll go and speak to Glenlivet potentially, and vice versa. So it's funny. It's the only people in Scotch whisky that don't like each other, the marketing teams. Everyone else, best friends, and share ideas, and it's a funny old world, but it's a very convivial community of people, which is great.
Yeah, which I think it actually should be. In talking of that, should we open a bottle? I think we should obviously start with the Scallywag before we go on to Big Pete. It'd be lovely to have a little pour. Yeah. It's going to show everyone the little label here. If it comes up to me, the camera, there we go. The Scallywag, great dog. You've seen my dog. This is the Douglas Lane dog, which is it's another terrier, isn't it? What kind of terrier? You've got a story about the dog.
Yeah, so it's a fox terrier. I don't know if you can see on the label here, it's actually missing a tooth.
Okay, I'm gonna look at my bottle. I haven't got my glasses on, but I'll take your word for it.
So it's not a mistake. This was a real dog. This was Binks, the fox terrier. So there's been a long line of fox terriers within the Douglas Lane family, and this was Binks, who sadly passed away just before we bottled this, but has been immortalised on the bottle, which is quite lovely. So no, Binks was a real dog, immortalised in the label, but this was our second Remarkable Regional Malt. It came around from, actually, as I said, Big Pete was our first one. And I think we were looking to do a limited edition Big Pete. And the artist that had sketched the design for Big Pete had come in and was sat with Fred, and Binks was sat on the couch in the sample room. And there was a break in play, and the artist started sketching Binks. And Cara and Fred had fallen in love with the image so much so that they were like, let's do another brand. Let's do another blended malt. And our original plan with Big Pete wasn't to do a Remarkable Regional Malt series. We were just going to do a blended malt from Islay. And once we'd seen that artwork, it was, let's do a Speyside blended malt. Why not? And single cask, single malts from Speyside, which this is. And yeah, it's, again, 46% natural colour, non-chill filtered.
I mean, isn't that the absolute beauty, though, of a company like Douglas Lane, that if that was Diageo or Pernod Ricard, that'd be 3 years worth of meetings to get a free.
Very much potentially back and forth between marketing, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know. So do you have any aspirations? I mean, you can see it here as global ambassador. You know, you could create your legacy by coming up with an idea. Guys, let's just.
I'd have to get past the Fred firewall first.
The Baxter,
That'd be great. I'd have to get past Fred's firewall first. That talented nose of his, but yeah, absolutely, that would be a great legacy to leave.
Can you imagine that? How well, you know, these opportunities exist, don't they? You know, never say never. These things, you know, if you've been there for 20 years, maybe they do one in commemoration of you.
Exactly. I'm sure Fred's got a few casks already down, just preparing for that moment.
As soon as he saw you, got the job.
Exactly.
Lay them down.
Absolutely. The one thing with this, you know, when I do my tastings and we have them all lined up with natural colour, so a lot of our whiskies are fairly light in colour, especially the Remarkable Regional Malts, and Scallywag is the darkest of all. It's 75% sherry or Oloroso sherry cask, roughly 75% Oloroso sherry, and 25% bourbon cask, giving it that lovely colour that you see. So the two words we use to describe it is fruity and spiced. single casks, single malts from Speyside only, and I said most notably Glenrothes, Macallan and Mortlach in every single batch.
And are these are casks direct from the distillery, or are you refilling casks once you receive the whiskey?
So it's actually something we're very proud of, is our wood policy that we introduced, I believe, in the 60s. And what we were doing at that point, what I mean by that is that we're introducing new mixed spirits from different distilleries into our casks that we've deliberately chosen. So there are elements where we have purchased, aged stock, but it's minimal part of the business. What we really like to focus on is that element of creation, let's say. You're not just taking aged stock and bottling it, that we're actually introducing it into our wood policy and a level of creation. And now with Strathurn in 2019 and Clutha, we're building, and fingers crossed we'll be running soon, is that we're actually going to take over from the whole start, is taking the new mixed spirit into maturity, into bottle, and capturing the whole process.
Brilliant. And are there barrel experiments which haven't worked and you've actually just sold on the whiskey or discarded it?
No, I mean, the thing is with whiskey, you can always enter it into a new cask and adapt it and change it. So yes, there's casks that we had designed and said, right, that's going to go into single cask. That's, let's say we're taking Dalhousie new mixed spirit and introducing it into sherry cask. Dalhousi's got that really meaty, thick new mixed spirit. It was designed for sherry butts. But all of a sudden you're like, well, this isn't actually aging the way that we'd wanted it to. So we're not going to put this a new mixed spirit, a single cask. But then you go, that's got that lovely funky cinnamon note. And then you go, right, well, this will work beautifully within Scallywag. It's adding that element, and then it's how do you soften up the rest of it. So there are examples of casks that aren't aging the way you want them to, but you can always adapt and change it and capture the good elements of casks within blends, and even single malts themselves are technically blended, just as long as those casks come from the same distillery.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's always interesting. It's very much the same process of I come from the wine background, as I was saying earlier, but of a blended champagne. Dom Perignon might have wine from 70 vineyards over 15 or 20 vintages in there, just to get that particular style. And there's not that many drink sectors which actually do that. And why not? Because you're creating your house style, aren't you? You're creating exactly what you want. It's your recipe.
Exactly. The one thing I love about Scallywag is on the nose you've got that fruity and spiced character, but going deeper into that, things like gingerbread, there's for me it's the dried ingredients of Christmas cake. You've got raisins, the cinnamon, the dark, brown sugar going into this. And the one thing I always use in examples and tastings is that people always ask me about adding water to whiskey, whether it's allowed. Of course it's allowed. You drink whiskey the way you want to drink it. But Scallywag, I always use an example, is adding a little bit of water and then just covering it and just 15 seconds, bringing it back to the nose, and all of a sudden it's that fresh out the oven, gooey Christmas cake that you're getting. So you're going from those dried ingredients to the warmer, wetter, fresh out the oven Christmas cake.
I'm getting a little bit of some dried sort of almost like apricot orange as well, sort of in the background, some notes.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the idea behind the remarkable regional malts is to give people that classic flavor profile of each region, and what's pushing the industry forward, which is amazing, is innovation. You're seeing these amazing casks coming forward, which is the right direction for Scotch whisky, in my opinion. But what we've done here with the remarkable regional malts is give people that classic traditional flavor profile. So when someone says, oh, that's a classic Speyside whisky, when they're talking about any whisky, that's the profile that we're capturing with Scallywag.
Yeah.
Well, cheers.
What is your market generally for these regional malts? It's an existing whiskey drinker, one would assume. But then
existing whiskey drinkers, I think, would be more, absolutely, is the kind of target market. But it's also adventurous, I would say, because I think, let's say, traditional whiskey drinkers are going to grab your Lagavulin 16s, your Talisker 10s, let's say. And it's just kind of making them aware that I think blended malt is one hurdle as a category. People see blended and they assume the worst, and that's absolutely not true. And so that's one kind of hurdle. The labels are another hurdle. You've got these, I think I've got Timorous Beastie over my right shoulder here, which is friendly whiskey, 46.8%. It's Timorous by name, not by nature. It's a punchy whiskey.
Yeah.
Scallywag, as you can see here, it's again 46% high strength, non-chill filtered. It's mouth coating, it's intense, it's flavorful. it is for, for me, it's for people that are introducing themselves to whiskey and understanding regions and understanding what casks can do. And then you've also got for people that genuinely enjoy a dram. And then from there, I put these in cocktails very regularly.
Yeah, I think it's delicious. Actually, I'm going now on an afternote. I'm getting some dried figs coming through, and it's sort of almost a hint of it's probably coming from the wood, but some sort of stem ginger, sort of very sort of subtle nuance of that.
Yeah.
It's just the taste is just lingering. It's what a lovely drop.
And I think it's got great texture as well. Coming from that non-chill filtration, but also that strength level.
It's actually really joys me tasting this, because yesterday I was judging at the Great Taste Awards, and I went for about 60 gins. I was hoping it was going to be a whiskey judging day, but it was gin, which I equally like, but a lot of them are flavoured gins, and it's not my bag,
Oh really? Bit of an exhausted palate.
Yeah, it was just and then finding when I got home I needed a whiskey.
Well, David, cheers. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. That's really, really good. That's fantastic. So now we've got the Big Pete, which obviously, as you all know, watching this, hopefully, don't taste the Big Pete first. Probably leave this, to last in any tastings. It's going to be a big, strong, peaty monster.
We do this in a very succinct way. We go from the Epicurean, Timor-Species, Scallywag, the Gauldrons, Rock Island to Big Pete. And we purposely do that in that way. I'm sure as you're always tasting level of intensity. But the one thing I always make clear to people is that you're tasting level of intensity, but that doesn't mean that it's less flavorful at the beginning. No. Just as a tasting menu at a restaurant, for example, you're not, you'd be very disappointed if all of a sudden the first dish they give you is there's no flavor in it. And that's not what they're doing, obviously. So whenever we do tastings, I always encourage people to nose back to Epicurean and actually see how sweet it is. And the notes that you get in that aren't in Big Pete, and vice versa. What we're doing here, which I think is what, just in general Scotch whiskey is amazing, is 3 ingredients. Let's say malt whiskey, water, yeast, and barley, aging in oak, and you're capturing an infinite amount of flavor profiles, which I think is just so wonderful.
No, absolutely. It's interesting, being the bigger, more powerful, pungent whiskey. It's actually, quite a lighter colour as well.
Yeah, I think it has. For me, I think Islay whiskies always have that lemongrass yellow colour on them, and it's always like a kind of wasp or bumblebee, where it's that black and yellow. Stay away from me. This is going to be a bit punchy. But I absolutely adore. Big Pete is not a whiskey. Big Pete is a person. He's been part of the family for a very long time now. He is the Bigfoot of Islay. He's a fisherman in Islay and a very good friend of the Douglas Laing family. But the one thing I adore about Big Pete is on the nose is really clean. It's organised. There's that kind of lemon, sweet citrus, almost like a lemon pie. But when you take this onto the palate, it starts growing immediately. So you take it onto the palate and it's that kind of controlled chimney smoke, licorice sweetness, and then just builds and builds and builds to this wild bonfire smoke until that's what you're exhaling. And I always encourage people to just focus on that and see from the nose, try and remember the nose, and then go from the exhale to how much this changes. And that's what I feel you should judge any good Islay whiskey on, is the exhale is when you really finish drinking it.
Yeah, I mean, the nose it's just delightful. I mean, it's absolutely, it's beautiful, because it sounds a funny term to use, but the nose is balanced.
It is exactly what you want.
It's just the level of the smokiness and the peat is just right. It's just complementing it. It's gorgeous.
And I think a lot of people are quite surprised with the nose, especially it's Big Pete. It's called Big Pete, and they don't expect there is a sweetness in the nose. I think that medicinal note that you always look for in an Islay is there, but it's not overpowering. The sweetness is still there.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Flash.
What a lovely dram, and you can feel the smoke. It's rising, almost within there. It's developing, and over time, it's getting the depth of flavour is actually coming through the longer lasting in your mouth. It's a great mouthfeel as well. It's intensifying actually. And
I just think it's a really satisfying dram, because it's just from the nose is very different, and then the tip of the palate, and then the finish is just, it's a very complete rounded whiskey for me.
It is. I think it's just, dare I say it, compared to like a Laphroaig 10, I'd go Big Pete.
Oh, brilliant. It's it's amazing. I remember I was for a guy in Mumbai, and he talked about, he's like, I love peated whiskey, but I only drink whiskies that are 21 years and older. And I was like, right, well, you don't enjoy peaty whiskey then. And he's like, I think I was quite irritable that day. I was very short with him. and he was saying, he's like, no, I love peaty whiskey. I was like, well, no, peat's something that's aged out of whiskey. If you like peaty whiskey, 5 to 10 years old is optimum, depending on, Laphroaig have a very deep cut, so you could probably age Laphroaig much older to keep the peat in, but just depending on a number of things. But I was saying to him, 5 to 10 for me is peat town. That's where you want to be. Average age on Big Pete core is about 7 to 8 years old, around about that time. So for me, it's perfect. Keep the peat in, and because you're utilizing blended malt, you're taking single cask single malts from different distilleries, you're able to kind of create, for me, I don't know, a more flavorful character for me.
Well, I think what it's got as well to me is a level of refinement that you don't necessarily, find. It's
which, funnily enough, I don't think you would expect from this guy here.
No,
but he certainly offers it.
Yeah, and I think, I think I'm trying to think of a nice, descriptor. If you got doing a barbecue and doing, wood chips from Tesco's, that's one thing. But like yours are, these premium wood chips you're smoking with, in the barbecue. And I think that level of smoothness, of refinement, and sort of subtlety of flavour really shows through. I think that's really delightful. And it's one that you're not going to get bored of drinking either. Sometimes you can have the big hit, can't you, of the smoke, and actually, 1 or 2 drams. This is enough. It's a very heavy whiskey. This is actually, I think, something you could drink, multiple drams of quite happily without getting tired. I think it's multi-dimensional. There's a lot to find in there.
Yeah, and I've just gone back for a few more sips there, and you see from that, as you're talking about, that initial hit with really, as you say, heavily smoked or tarry whiskies, the next sip is maybe adding to that intensity, let's say. Whereas I think there's like that fresh moment where you take the sip again and it's just kind of fresh lemon, citrus, clean, and then builds back into that, classic Islay soot and ash and chimney smoke in the back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whiskey that, I'd love to see more chefs use, actually. You can see this going particularly well for me anyway, with perhaps duck dishes, in smoked salmon, obviously. But I think in food, that just goes particularly well. And, as a part of a marinade, because the flavour it lends to be absolutely, fantastic. And you just don't see enough whiskey in food. And I particularly in Scotland, oh my goodness, I forget what it is. Not haggis, there's another one.
Black pudding.
What's that?
Black pudding.
No, not black pudding. I think it's like really can't remember it. It's a chicken dish which comes with a whiskey sauce.
Balmoral chicken.
That's it. That's the one. Yeah. I love it. And you just don't see it down here. And yeah.
No, I make my whiskey sauce, or my whiskey pepper sauce with Big Pete.
There we go. So yeah.
Yeah. Just flame it, flambe it, and then add the double cream in once it's kind of settled, and you get that really sooty, ashy element to it. It's great.
Oh,
I've set off the fire alarm a few times, but it works.
Good. As a company, or do you guys sort of look at restaurants as a market and matching whiskey with foods, or is that an area you don't really get that involved in?
No, I think absolutely we do. It's obviously not key focus for us, but it's something that we definitely look at. I think Rock Island here is One of my favourites of Marco Regional malts. I absolutely adore it, just from my preferences, my flavour profile. And it's one that we pair with seafood very regularly. So we've got these lovely atomizers that we spray on oysters, for example.
Yeah.
And as you say, basting salmon in it or something just works so well. A friend of mine's a very talented chef, Roberto Sanchez, and he's done like fish cream sauce with it, and it just works stunning. It really works because it's got that level of sweetness. With Rock Island, we incorporate Islay into it, just Jura, Arran, and Orkney that's going into it. So you've got that fresh, clean, good sweetness in it, and then you've got that coastal maritime and very delicate peat coming through in it. So if you can imagine that what I've described there in oysters and trouts and haddock or whatever, it works really well. So yeah, the restaurants is definitely something that we do consider, but obviously not key focus, let's say.
Yeah, and just sort of wrapping up, really. I think we talked about the single cask. Perhaps what any particularly memorable single cask whiskies that you've had the pleasure of drinking at Douglas Lane so far, which have really stood out?
A good few.
All of them.
Let's say, yeah, all of them. We had a 14-year-old Leche Pedro Jimenez cask, which I absolutely fell in love with. Which Jamie, who's our brand development guy for their business development guy for the North, recommended because he'd had a nip from the sample room in it, and it was absolutely stunning. And another one was an extra particular, which is our kind of top tier brand of a Caol Ila 35-year-old. Now, as I said, peat ages out of whiskey. That's not to say that old peat isn't amazing. And for me, it turned into, specifically with this occasion, was like strawberries and cranberries and raspberries. So it became this sweet, fresh, clean Caol Ila, which is something that you don't see very often in that flavour profile. So we've had a Caol Ila 35, a Leche 14-year-old PX cask, and then we had a Port Dundas PX finished cask, which was only released a few months ago, but sold out, unfortunately. It was 14 years in bourbon, 2 years finished in PX sherry. Port Dundas being a closed distillery, it's always a great opportunity to taste, dead stock effectively. But that was a cracking whiskey as well.
Thank you very, very much indeed for your time. I'm looking forward to lockdown ending, and I had to cancel 2 trips to Scotland already last year, but really looking forward to getting up to Scotland. Hopefully I can share a dram with you if you're not on the east coast of America by then.
Let me know, and we'll get into the sample room and get some tasting done of some old stock.
Brilliant. That'd be absolutely a dream. What a wonderful thing. Stuart, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Pleasure, David. Thank you. All the best.